Nope, we cannot hear you yet.
यार जिस उसका जो है माइक खराब हो गया. What the fuck, man? Just give us 2 minutes.
Mic is working. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
We are here. Yes. Fazan कह रहा है we are using voice changes. Yes, that is how technically professional we are. Okay,
Yes.
dude, start.
Yep.
तुम्हारा इंट्रो मांग रहे हैं वो.
So intro ये है कि AdMad is all about putting some sanity into the otherwise mad world of advertising, and or the other way around. You know, the advertising is too sane right now. There needs to be some element of madness added to it, and that's what AdMad does. There isn't a lot to me than this.
Okay, we can get started with the AMA. If anyone has any questions, please everyone stay on mute. If anyone has any questions, add it to the Zoom chat. We already have some pre-submitted questions, which we'll get started with while people put in their questions. So the first question, AdMad and the team at AdMad, I have my own brand and I am handling my performance marketing very well, but I cannot understand how do I work on brand image. I know how to do influencer marketing, but I cannot understand how to start. A very loaded question, a lot to unpack.
But I think there is a challenge within the approach and the way this question is crafted. And what we need to understand is that if you think that you can, you know how to do influencer marketing and you have still not figured out what your brand image is, there is some problem, you know, because sometimes you really need to know what the starting point needs to be. You cannot influence, you cannot execute influencer marketing unless you have figured out what are the foundations of your brand. And brand image is of course one of the foundations, but also यहाँ जो सबसे ज़्यादा समझने की ज़रूरत है बात वो ये कि brand image itself is a byproduct of doing a few things right. You know, you cannot lead by deciding कि ओ आज से मैं अपने brand image पे काम करना शुरू करूँगा, because eventually if that is the approach you will turn into this cringe people pleasing brand, and the comms are going to turn out to be like that, like most Pakistani advertising. So when you want to work on brand image is always going to be a byproduct of your brand purpose. You know, you need to have the foundations correct. Why do you exist in the first place? And what is the difference that you want to create in people's lives on the functional delivery, and also the point of view that you want to create about your story? That is eventually accumulate into a brand image, you know. So again, as I said, always the starting point are the basic foundations that need to be put in place first, and asking why do I do what I do as a brand is the first question that you need to answer, and the rest of it will eventually fall in place, and in no time you will see that you have a brand image. So yeah, I hope I was able to answer this question.
I have a follow-up just to
Yeah.
clarify for people. If let's say a lot of people that are coming here are, you know, wanting to go into startups, and a lot of these technology startups are may or may not have a, you know, physical product or even, you know, something other than software, right? So a lot of it comes down to, hey, this is the product, functionally this is what I needed to do. How should they be thinking about brand image in the early days? Eventually, I think it becomes really important when you're trying to scale, but early days, first 5 employees, first few customers, how should they be thinking about brand image?
As I said, brand image is always going to be a byproduct of the initial foundations of your brand. If it's early days, you're 5 people, there are less customers, you still need to have a brand purpose. Unless you have a brand purpose, you cannot have a brand image, you know. And if you don't look at it from that lens, you can start your exercise by thinking, oh, you know, there's a certain level of image that I want to create about my brand. But if it is not standing on a clear purpose, that image is going to turn out to be very superficial. You know, your starting point is going to be, oh, there is a certain way I want to look like in front of the people that I'm going to, in the ecosystem, in front of the stakeholders. Then that image or perception that you're going to create, if it's not rooted into a purpose, then it's impossible that that image is going to last. And also that then you will be creating that image out of your ass, you know. It has to be something based on the difference that you want to create as a brand in the lives of people, right? And that is something that you want to stand for. ये बिल्कुल वैसे ही है कि जैसे आज मैं एक दिन उठूं बोलूं कि मैं you know अब मैं अच्छा इंसान दिखना चाहिए हूं सबको, या there is a certain level of perception that I want to create about myself. I need to be seen as a learned person on my socials and in my social circle in my family. But it won't stand a chance. People are not going to take me seriously for long unless I work on myself and craft a purpose for my personality. I actually invest time in building my personality, and feeding myself with some level of knowledge, so that eventually people can see me the way I want them to see. You know, so it can never be a superficial exercise of starting to decide that, oh, I need to have a certain level of image. So if I really need to tell you in terms of the steps that are taken to create a brand image, is first of all, you need to figure out what is the proposition. Eventually, how are you cracking relevance with the people on a functional level? And then also figuring out that with this relevance and this proposition, and I'm entering into people's lives, what is the larger difference am I going to be creating? Which will lead you to answering the question that why do my brand exist? Why does my brand exist in this world, and what is the difference it is creating? You know, and when once you arrive that, you will know what your fight is. What is that one thing you are changing? And then when you take a stand against that fight, that eventually leads to a brand image. And you know, it is very, very difficult for a brand that just started out to have an image right away. It will take time.
Yes, that makes sense. We had another question here. So we're going to jump around a lot because these questions are in the order that people submitted them. We wanted to make sure people who submitted early get their questions answered.
Sure, no worries. Not at all.
So the question is how to create short and compelling ads for the health insurance industry.
Yeah. So health insurance industry तो एक बहुत specific बात हो गई, उस पे हम बाद में आएंगे. पहले हम इस बात को समझने की कोशिश करते हैं how to create short and compelling ads. In fact, even before we get into how to create short and compelling, let's understand what is a compelling ad. You know, the effectiveness of an ad is only measured with the fact that it is, you know, how David Ogilvy quote, I don't know if you guys have heard it, it's very simple. David Ogilvy used to say that you sell or else. You know, you have a proposition, you have a product, you have a brand. If you are able to uh, make your entry into people's hearts and in their pockets, that is only you can that is only when you can consider yourself to be effective. So effective advertising, there is a process to effective advertising. Iske ilham nahi hote. You know, there is a science to it. And this is something that we all really need to understand, that good, compelling, effective, meaningful advertising, there is a process that exists. And over and over again, if that process is used, then only you can create effective advertising, regardless of the category that you're operating in. भले आप इंश्योरेंस बेच रहे हैं या कॉन्डम बेच रहे हैं, process वही रहेगा. You know, and that process is that you really need to first understand the proposition, the proposition that you have, but then also finding the relevance of that proposition with the people you're talking to. The point is, we spend a lot of time in understanding what we are trying to sell, who we are ourselves, you know, what our product is, but we don't try to bridge the offering with the consumers by understanding the consumer perspective. One thing which is really missing, the reason why we look at our ads and say कि ये किसके लिए बनाया है, you know, who talks like that, who walks like that, who sings like that, who dances like that. This is not my life. This is not my story. This is not how I behave. This brand is talking to someone else. All of that happens, and the reason all the advertising, most of it, 90% of Pakistani advertising turns out to be cringe, is because there is no consumer perspective being taken into the equation. So the first step to creating effective, compelling advertising is knowing your customer. If you're an insurance company in a country like Pakistan, where the insurance industry or the category has only 2% of penetration, first you need to understand that why does an average Pakistani doesn't give a shit about insurance? Why does an average Pakistani doesn't give a shit about what happens tomorrow? And unless you have those insights figured out, unless you know what are the key barriers to insurance category, you are not going to be compelling. And if your starting point is going to be, let's make short and compelling ads, that's a fucked up starting point. The starting point should always be that this is the category and the brand that I have, that I need to deal with, and I need to bring it to people. How do I bring it to people? By first understanding who these people are, what do they think, and where are the barriers. And then only, so for me to sit right now and tell you what those barriers are, it's going to be another meeting altogether. But I'm just going to tell you the process of creating compelling communication. And then short and all of that, those are executional details. Of course, when you decide the mediums, you will have to be cognizant of fact that how long or how short those ads are supposed to be. But first you need to figure out the insights, the point of view, and what is that one singular thing that you want to communicate so that you can address the barriers that are existing.
Thank you for that. We have another question from chat. So I'm going to read it out. It's from Ali Mohammed Beg, and he asks, and you can decline to answer this, but what are your thoughts on Byron's Sharp's How Brands Grow? Asking because he basically disagrees with most of the traditional branding and marketing lessons, and he gives empirical evidence to support his argument.
Well, I'm nobody to disagree with what the gentleman has written in the book. I have tried to read it. It wasn't so too inspiring for me because the school of thought that I belong to, you will see me quoting David Ogilvy's of the world a lot, and those guys believed in the art and form of storytelling and advertising and marketing and emotional connect. While this gentleman, of course, truly believed in the functional propositions of things and creating less fluff, as he would call it. So I'm nobody to disagree, but that's not the school of thought I belong to. Like anything, things anywhere else, like you have political point of views, you have school of thoughts, you have fiqhs in religion. Advertising and marketing also has, distinct school of thoughts that you either believe in or don't believe in. So I don't believe in Byron Sharp.
Okay. And then there's another question from Baba. He asked, he says he has 6 to 7 years of experience in the marketing industry. He has switched very frequently during his tenure, not spending more than 2 years in one role. And he finds it difficult to land a job because of so many switches on his profile. I assume he thinks it's because of this. It may or may not be. What do you think? So I'll rephrase his question. What do you think about frequently switching jobs versus staying at one place for a longer time? How is that perceived specifically in the marketing industry in Pakistan?
So I think there was a time when it used to be a big deal if you had a lot of switches on your resume, and that is something which has recently been normalized, especially by Gen Z. And if I am hiring particularly, I wouldn't care much because I would understand that it takes time for an individual to truly find their place in the industry and then stick around for a longer time. Also, the definition of longer time spending at long time spending long time at one place has also changed over the years. Previously, long time used to be 7 years, 8 years, 10 years. Now, if somebody has spent 2 years in an organization, that is considered a long time. So I think everybody has their own trajectory, their own career path, and there is nothing wrong in switching a job if you're not feeling it, if you are not invested in it, and if you find the environment to be toxic. It's better to move on and not worry about how it will look like on your resume. And when you arrive at a place where you feel that, okay, this is an organization that genuinely values me, and I'm able to bring something to the table which is being valued, And that is the time when you really need to genuinely be spending some time there to not only for your own learning and then also building your career on top of it. Yeah.
So you've talked about how it is no longer perceived as a bad thing and you're trying to find your place in the world. But is it ever an advantage to have switched so many roles? Like, do you see hiring managers ever consider, hey, this person has gotten multiple experiences from different industries and has now come here and they're going to have a wider scope of what they think through, and they've been exposed to more sort of ideas and areas of marketing. Does that ever come into play in your opinion?
No, I think unless the person who's hiring is starting out or has an organization which itself has an ADHD. Otherwise, I don't think like that will be another extreme if I tell you that it goes in your favor to have a lot of switches on your resume, because practically speaking, it takes at least a year or a couple of years for you. For example, if you're working in a category on a particular brand, you at least need a couple of years to at least though FE awards to lagte hain for you to figure out that whether you were able to achieve anything for the brand or not, for you to really get a grip of things around it. In fact, if it's a challenging category, like for example banking or tobacco, then it takes much longer for you to get a grip of things because these are very, very challenging categories. If you've spent a year in telco, let's say, so you may have been fast tracked into learning a lot of things. So it depends, but I don't think it particularly favors you that if you've switched a lot. I think consistency and spending a particular amount of time in one single category and having all the learnings not only helps in that particular category, it helps you generally also. So it's not like if somebody has worked 7 years and spent their time in two categories versus someone 7 years in seven categories. So I don't think that seven category person has any advantage over the other.
That makes a lot of sense. I thought this was an interesting question. I'm not sure of what they meant by the phrasing here, but how do you see performance marketing and SEO's role and impact in Pakistani market? They also wrote global, but I thought the question should be specific to Pakistani market. You can contrast with the global market if you want, but would really love your thoughts on what you think about performance marketing and SEO as two different sort of paths.
So I think performance marketing and SEO are a very small part of the overall marketing picture. It is very important. It's crucial in these times. But I see a lot of people trying to put performance marketing and SEO as something central to building brands or getting sales. It is one of the functions, and these are also not standalone functions. Like I'll give you an example. If you are building a brand and first you have crafted a proposition, now you're building a brand and you're going into the market, there are multiple things that you need to do to be able to have effective performance marketing or SEO in place. It all goes back to again the initial conversation where we were talking about that you first need to have your proposition and your foundations in place. You really need to build from the point of purpose. You need to figure out your audience, and that is going to be then reflective into all the initiatives that you're going to take, and that includes performance marketing. Performance marketing is not going to bring any results unless you're sure about what your brand is, who they're talking to, and specifically what are the challenges that you're going to be addressing through performance marketing and SEO. When I open my LinkedIn these days, everybody is a performance marketing expert and SEO expert, if not a CEO of their own company. So what I try to figure out is the fact that this small aspect of the whole equation has become such a big deal, bigger than what it is supposed to be. When you're dealing with the larger picture, it is a support function, and that's how this should be looked into. I'm not saying that this is a skill that doesn't require. I'm not considering it as a non-skill. It is something. It is an important skill. It's an important part of the whole equation. but it is not the equation. So that's what I would want to add here. And yeah, I see performance marketing has a huge role in future, but until unless you know the larger picture, it remains ineffective.
Okay, and then you've talked about performance marketing. What do you think about SEO? Like my question, and this is a personal question of mine, is do people like is search, right? Like is a search engine one of the first places people go to find information, and especially information about products in Pakistan, or is it less impactful than some of the Western countries?
It is very important, of course, but also it depends. It is not. This is not something which one size fits all. You know, every category, the customer journey, the customer behavior is different. अगर मुझे टूथब्रश खरीदना है तो पहले मैं जाके गूगल नहीं करूंगा उसको, you know. But अगर मुझे गाड़ी खरीदनी है तो मैं करूंगा. So you know, in every category, the role, of course, varies. Specifically in Pakistan, अगर हम बात करें तो I think compared to the rest of the world, Pakistan is still not that market which is where the customer journey originates from the digital space. So, but that doesn't mean that it's not important. It is important because there is a faction, especially in urban Pakistan. There's a certain, 50% of the population is below the age of 30. So we all assume that they're very tech savvy, internet savvy, and all of that. Their purchase journey begins from internet. So it is very, very important. But again, as I said, it's not central. You need to really assess the category that you're operating in. Like when I'm selling a toothbrush, my approach, my touch points, my communication strategy, comms planning will be absolutely different from when I'm selling an SUV. And again, there is no one size fit all formula that, you know, this is the deck that I once made for Kia Sportage. Now I'm going to apply it on close up as well, which is mostly the case in Pakistan, but that's not how it should be. Yeah.
So we've got two people asking this, one in the chat, one pre-submitted it. What do you think the advancements in AI, and I assume they mean specifically generative AI, will affect the marketing and advertising agency, both in the short and long run?
I think AI is amazing, and we should not have any sort of progressive phobia around it. All we need to do as the fraternity, as marketing people, is to figure out how it is going to enable us in the future. One thing that we really need to address right now is the fact that people are assuming that AI is going to make anything difficult for them in terms of is it going to take away jobs, in terms of is it going to fill for certain skills. That hasn't happened right now. It may happen in the future, but none of us know what the future holds. What is happening right now is that with the availability of these tools, you are able to turn around certain tasks in a more effective and more efficient way. And that's how it should be looked at right now. Like, for example, in the advertising industry, one of the things that takes a very long time is the fact that कि हम सोचते उर्दू में हैं, execute हम अंग्रेजी में करते हैं अपने ideas और presentations को, और फिर हम उसको वापस उर्दू में लेकर आते हैं आम जनता के लिए comms बनाने के लिए. वो जो बीच का पीरियड होता है जिसमें हम अंग्रेज बनने की कोशिश कर रहे होते हैं, the stage where we are presenting ideas to the clients, we are putting our thoughts together, that stage takes a lot of time, because of course we are thinking in Urdu, but we need to present our ideas in English. So what I'm looking at right now, that process is being shortened, because a lot of times people are thinking can think their ideas in the most rough forms, and then can use AI, like for example ChatGPT, to refine it and to make it more like, for example, if they're thinking of a big idea or an insight, AI can help them create a crisp, more shorter, more quicker, more understandable, more effective, punchy version of it. So that time that used to be spent in cracking the big idea, brainstorms, you can literally sit with your AI and do the brainstorm with them, and can have multiple options of ideas and expressions and springboards in front of you. So far, I see a lot of utility in the short run. In the long run, nobody knows what happens, because abhi to we are at that stage where there's a lot of policy making that is happening with regards to AI. So what sort of accessibility we will have in the future, we don't know. But in its current shape and form, ChatGPT is really helping in sort of polishing ideas and making beautiful decks. So enjoy it.
I got an interesting request in chat, so I'll jump to that first. What's your favorite ad right now? Right, it doesn't have to be current. It could be a very old one, but in Pakistan, what is your favorite ad?
That's a very, very difficult question. I am, you would know it by now. I'm not a fan of how Pakistani ads are, but I can generally tell you that I'm a fan of how Shan as a brand has evolved in Pakistan, and some of the communications that they have done, especially in the recent times. I'm a fan of those. And I'll tell you the reason why. I think the reason is that they have been able to, um, uh, take a stance, a fight, which is very, very clear, and they are very true to it, and they are very brave with it. And they are trying to build their relevance by not being a brand which is a people pleaser. They are also making people uncomfortable on a certain level, but that is cracking conversations. So anything that Shan is doing right now, anything that they're touching is turning into gold. So let's enjoy that. Yeah.
Nice. On the AI thread, Abdul Samad asks a two-pronged question. So with your use with ChatGPT specifically, where do I find the best AI prompts for copywriting was part one, and part two is what keywords would you suggest to use in prompts for effectiveness?
See, LinkedIn is filled with prompts right now. Everybody is sharing infographics on what prompts to be used with AI. I'll be honest with you. I personally feel that is not the right way to go about this. Um, the right way to, like, for example, I'm assuming that an AI prompt will be useful for someone who is already a copywriter. So if someone is a copywriter, if they are trying to crack or write a beautiful copy for the brief that they have, uh, they don't really need to switch off their brains. They need to write something, bounce it off with AI, see what the response comes. They need to have their own lens of assessing things. So instead of investing too much time in getting the right prompts, keep talking to ChatGPT. Like, for example, if I'm trying to write like a brand manifesto, right? I'll give ChatGPT a few pointers. We'll ask it to, put together a brand manifesto. ChatGPT understands what a brand manifesto is. The whole thing that's going to come out 99% of the times, the first response is too robotic. It's too ChatGPT, and it looks like that a human has not written. Then the conversation begins. Then you tell ChatGPT to humanize it, to add some emotions, replace this word. It's a process. You cannot give it all to AI to do it. You have to interact. It takes, I've seen, like, for example, if you have to write a good brand manifesto with the help of ChatGPT, it will still take an hour for you to do it because you will have to engage in a conversation with ChatGPT. Versus it'll take, in a normal situation when you have your Word document or a pen and paper, it'll take 3 to 4 hours to craft a brand manifesto. So that those 3 to 4 hours can be reduced to 1 hour, but that cannot be reduced to 5 minutes. That's the expectation you should not keep. So instead of thinking prompts, think of you talking to a resource which is helping you write a brand manifesto and brainstorm with it, and you will arrive at something. Don't look for formulas.
Yes, definitely. That's been my experience also. When you're writing with ChatGPT, it's best to have those editing skills, be able to pinpoint what you want and what you think is wrong with the current version and
If you
keep
can reply
iterating.
to this email again, because
Okay, let's move to next question. I know there's a few questions in chat. We'll get to them. We removed this question, I thought. Okay, what's the cause? Okay, so a really good question, I think. What's the cause of lack of innovation when it comes to creating DVCs or OOH ads or just overall brand communication? I think lack of innovation is one piece, but also would love for you to cover sort of lack of creativity or lack of targeting the right persona, which you've touched on a little bit, but would love you to bring that in here too.
I think it's a very interesting question, and this is a conversation which is the most important right now. I feel the word innovation or being innovative is something which is overused, abused a lot of times. Advertising is supposed to be, or comms or brand building is supposed to be effective. You know, again, your starting point cannot be that, oh, let's be innovative. When you do that, you sort of digress from what your real objectives are. See, what we really need to see is that when you're developing comms, especially brand communications, there is a role. They are supposed to be a solution for an existing problem. you know when you have created a product, you have created a proposition, now you want to build a brand. You need to really know your consumers, to build the relevance, and then you need to know the barriers that are there in building those relevances, right? If I'm going to be thinking that, I want to create a proposition or brand communication that's never seen before, it's innovative, it involves tech, and it's fancy, you will be able to do all of that, but that is not there's no guarantee that it's going to be effective with the people that you're talking to. For example, if I am to sell a shampoo in a lower socioeconomic bracket, people who have a very limited access to technology, or even if they have access to technology, there is only limited use that they take from it. I cannot be very innovative in crafting solutions and going too far away from what is palatable for them. I first need to stay in the realm of what is supposed to be done, my objectives. And as long as I'm closer to my objective, the most simplistic approaches can sometimes be most effective. So the starting point is not innovation, and I'm not worried about lack of innovation in advertising and brand building because that's not an issue. The issue is of effectiveness, and that only happens when you truly understand the challenges, the barriers, and what is supposed to be communicated to the consumers and how to build relevance. Now, if you have this foundation correct, if you have your heart in the right place, if you're clear about what your purpose is and what you want to sell and who your people are, then everything else just becomes a medium, right? Then DVC is a medium, then out of home is a medium. Then you are invested in cracking the insight and the messaging. You know the broader thought process that exists there, and then you sort of uh, uh, put that into autopilot, and then eventually you are able to churn out messages after messages and campaigns after campaigns. And once you have your basics right, life does give you a lot of opportunities to be innovative. Like, for example, for you to play an AB de Villiers scoop, you first need to learn how to block the fucking ball. You can't go on the nets and say कि आज मैं AB de Villiers वाले बैट के पीछे चौके मारूंगा. You first need to have your basics in place. You should know how to take a single and a double before you hit a helicopter shot. And that is the case with advertising and branding as well. There are a lot of brands who are trying to be very innovative for the fuck of it. That's not how it works. You first need to have your basics in place, and then eventually life and there will be opportunities for you to, within those simplistic approaches, you will have ideas to be innovative. I'll give you an example of a brand in India, Cadbury. They're doing some amazing work. They are using tech in reaching out to people in multiple ways. They've recently done something which was very smart also, which was about customizing happy birthday messages for everyone who receives a box of Cadbury. They will have their own way. Like, their insight was basically that the most mundane thing in the world is the happy birthday song. For everyone, it's the same. So what they did was, using generative AI, every pack of Cadbury that you receive as a birthday gift will have your own personalized AI generated birthday song, which is going to be different from the other one. Now, for them to arrive at this tech solution and this beautiful, brilliant AI generated idea, they had to have a basic in place. They knew that what Cadbury stands for. They have become synonymous to gifts. They knew the occasion. They knew that we are going to be capturing the space of birthdays. They knew that there's an insight that all birthday songs are always same, just the replacement of name. And on these three basic principles, they were able to innovate and bring something to the world. So the most simplistic thoughts and ideas and insights become innovative when you start from the basics.
That makes sense. There's a few other people who have joined. Please make sure you are on mute. You can mute anyone who is not. And then if you have any questions, add them to the Zoom chat. We will be picking questions from there. There was one question, Almadude, about is actual attribution possible in marketing? The example they give is someone sees ads on social but converts directly on organic. You can't track that, and vice versa. OOH advertising results in online. Their examples are clearly not you can't attribute them, but would love to hear your thoughts about what you think about the importance of tracking that and sort of basing your performance on that.
See, tracking, performance, all of these things, the more access you have to the consumer journey, the more you're able to sort of understand the barrier points and create customized messaging for customers to sort of take a control of their journey, right? But generically speaking, I wouldn't know. As I said, you really need to know the category, right? And you need to know this only works when you have a case in front of you. Of course, it is important to know that how the consumer journey unfolds, regardless of the medium. Like from the very basic level of how a customer walks into a modern trade outlet, and how they navigate through the aisles and shelves, and how they reach to your product, and what should be the way to ensure that they are converted to your brand. All of those basic principles of shoppers marketing on a larger scale when it comes to the digital journey, those are the basic principles that are applied. And the more opportunity you have to sort of control and direct that journey, of course it works in your favor. But the point is, the question that we really need to ask ourselves, that who is really investing money in Pakistan in tracking those journeys and getting the right data. My question is that, okay, fine, attribution, amazing. But from media agencies to creative agencies to even brands, the conversations are not about getting the right set of data. The conversations are about something else. And that something else is very superficial still. For us to make decisions based on uh, these practicalities, someone needs to change the game, change the face of advertising in Pakistan, and start saying, you know what, we are not going to move an inch until unless we have the complete clarity on the next step of the customer, and we truly understand through data that what the psychographics are, what are the segments, how are they behaving. I'll give you an example. The one common division of socioeconomic class that is used across Pakistan is SEC, right? Socioeconomic class A, B, C. The research on which that entire division is based was done like 25, 30 years ago. We are still not able to have a true consensus when it comes to when we say somebody is SECA, what does that really mean? Because for a lot of advertisers and marketers, that SECA means someone who belongs to an upper socioeconomic bracket. Now, in Pakistan, upper socioeconomic bracket starts from Suzuki Swift and it goes up till Corvette. So who are you really talking to? So there are no subdivisions that exist. There are no studies or data available for us to understand psychographics. And with the digital medium, it should be easier to do it because, of course, whenever there is an involvement of tech, you should be able to extract more data. But we are living in a vacuum where there is no investment being done in this direction. You will see all of these self-proclaimed advertising gurus and CEOs of the companies giving their interviews on LinkedIn talking about, oh, data is the future and it's the fucking petrol of today. How much are you investing in it? Zero. So that is the problem area. So we can talk about these fancy things, attribution and all of that, but on ground we really don't have a starting point to really put that in motion.
Got it. So we have 14 more minutes. If you have any questions, please put them in Zoom chat. We got one from Babar Khan, which I thought was a good one. So based on your conversations with marketers, what do you think are new services that agencies should offer?
Massage services. Ego massage services. Um, I don't know, like agencies should uh, first, offer the services they already offer in the most effective way, right? It's very, very basic. It's no rocket science. Eventually, when a brand comes to you, they are coming to you looking at you as a doctor, or they should be looking at you as a doctor, right? You're the first task for any agency within the realm of comms planning and communications and advertising is to do a fair diagnosis of where the brand is going wrong and having a fair conversation with the marketers and telling them that this is where you're fucking it up, and then giving them the solutions. That's all the transaction that needs to happen. But over the years, what has happened is that because agencies are not honest and truthful with their with marketers in giving them the clear picture, because they don't invest a lot of time in diagnosis and sometimes they don't want to rub the egos the wrong way, they don't give the fair picture. And as a result, in the last few years, marketers, instead of looking at advertising agencies as doctors, they have started to look at them as pharmacies. And by that, what I mean is that a marketer would walk in and say कि मुझे Panadol चाहिए. They've stopped having those conversations. They would say कि मेरे पेट में दर्द है, सर में दर्द है, बुखार हो रहा है, रीजन क्या हो सकता है, let's do a fair diagnosis, कोई टेस्ट लिख के दें, ये बात नहीं हो रही है. They will come to you and they'll tell you कि I want a 15-seconder XYZ communication for this medium and this is what I want to say. And the more intellectual masturbation that happens around that conversation, the more pissed off marketers get, because agencies have no fucking idea how to do the diagnosis. Most of the agencies in Pakistan do not even have a brand strategist who's capable to do the diagnosis. So additional services to दूर की बात है, जो दे रहे हो वो तो सही से दो पहले. So that is what my point of view is on this.
Okay. A slight follow-up question is, what are your thoughts on companies trying to hire a jack of all trades, meaning social media, graphic designing, performance marketing, SEO, resources for cheap, and expect them to cover all aspects of digital marketing versus going to like specialists for different services?
Yeah, of course, I see agencies doing that, but it's a deeper problem. I'll give you an example. I was looking at one of the interviews by one of the biggest FMCGs in Pakistan. The CEO was talking about how they've invested a lot in the recent years in making the lives of their salespeople better by providing them, multiple things other than the basic salary, and how, and as a result, that started to reflect in the numbers and the growth of the company. So you take care of people and those people will take care of you in return. Now, this is the same company and the same CEO who have effectively cut down on advertising spends in terms of giving retainers to agencies, cutting them down to just project basis, and involving freelancers on projects like, for example, building communications and TVCs and thematic TVCs and all of that, practically killing the advertising industry in the last 5 years by cutting down on all sorts of revenue streams that were there for advertising agencies in the first place. So which tells us that for people sitting in leadership positions, as long as you are in my organization and on my payroll, then only I'm going to be taking care of you. The larger ecosystem, I don't give a fuck about. So the largest ecosystem is fucked in Pakistan. Advertising agencies literally have limited, very, very limited streams of revenue, especially if you are a creative agency. In Pakistan, getting paid for an idea is next to impossible. If you are a media agency, you have multiple channels of revenue. And when that happens, people who are already in the business, they're trying to keep the boat afloat by it's a trickle down effect. The corporates are not investing in sort of building the creative industry. The creative industries in returns, the local states are not spending enough money in building resources. And hence they eventually look for solutions like these. कि एक बंदे से 50 काम करवा लो, because eventually they also want to make some money at the end of the day. So if you want to fix this problem, which is a problem, your question was if this is a problem. Yes, this is a problem. There need to be specialized resources, specialized skills for each of these independently, and all of them should be paid enough that they go home happily. But for this to happen, the big corporates, the FMCGs, need to be less selfish and not just making the lives of their own people better who are on their payroll. They need to work towards making the ecosystem stronger, and that is only how advertising is going to thrive in Pakistan, and in return help these brands. There is a reason why banking, insurance, milk category, packaged milk category, they're stuck on a certain number. The penetration and the needle is not moving, is because we are not able to communicate to the larger audiences in Pakistan. Why? Because we don't have the creative and strategic ways to do it, because we have not invested in this industry. So it has to come from the big dogs in big companies.
We have 8 more minutes, so there's a couple of more questions. Osama asks, organizations globally are trying to blend the sort of financial and social objectives. How important do you think CSR is today? I assume they mean corporate social responsibility. Given that younger audiences seek what value any brand is adding to society in any possible way. I would love your views on that, but also, is it true in Pakistan also that Gen Z is more looking towards these social causes, or is it more a global phenomena and less so in Pakistan?
So I think being a brand that has a certain level of compassion and empathy is a very basic principle of brand building in today's times. We cannot mix that with CSR. CSR is a separate thing, right? Corporate social responsibility is one social responsibility that you have taken as a corporate and something that you invest in. That's a separate thing. You can have it. It's a good to have thing. Most of the times the end consumer wouldn't even know what your CSR initiatives are because they are only on your website and your annual reports, right? But for you to be compassionate, to have a certain level of in your day to day is very important, and that should not be mixed with CSR. Like, for example, if you are a brand and you're not sensitive to today's times, to people's, what they're going through, how challenging the times are, how the set of values are evolving, how the cultural shifts are happening. As a brand, you need to be aware of all of that. You can have a tone of voice of whatever you want. You can be a funny brand, but at the same time, your jokes then will have to be around the fact that are going to address some of the societal concerns that affect your end consumers. You can be a very serious and mature brand in talking about the functionalities that you're selling, but you also need to be cognizant of how those functionalities are effective in affecting in the day-to-day of the people that you're talking to. That is basic brand building, and CSR is separate to that. Once you've done these basics, you build your brand. Again, now you're in a position where you feel the people that I talk to, they feel that I'm talking to them and not at them. I understand their lives. I understand the role I'm playing in their lives. I'm being compassionate and empathetic. जब ये basics हो गए तो उसके बाद आपने कहा अच्छा ठीक है, added something, there has to be a CSR too. मैंने जिस जगह पे फैक्ट्री लगाई है वहां का मैं पानी सारा इस्तेमाल कर लेता हूँ, तो how do I give back to the community? That is a CSR. या मैं अगर इतना ज्यादा प्लास्टिक बनाता हूँ अपनी मैन्युफैक्चरिंग के अंदर जो कि जाके समंदर के अंदर जा रहा है और लैंडफिल हो रहा है, तो उसको काउंटर करने के लिए, बैलेंस आउट करने के लिए मैं एक इनिशिएटिव लेता हूँ, वो मेरा CSR है. And these things often stay at the back seat. You cannot make them your trumpet, right? Then it will come across as ke aap jo hai wo. In fact, what I'm trying to say is that you cannot use CSR as a tool for your financial growth. That's not how it works. And if you're going to do that, you will be caught naked and people will see through you. So ऐसे नहीं करना होता आपने. Your financial interests, your revenues are in one place, and for that you need to build brands, and for those brands you need to be relevant to people, and to be relevant to people you need to care for them. That's the equation of being a financially viable brand. And then CSRs are separate. Sorry for such a long answer to this.
Sorry, last question, since we're almost out of time. This was pre-submitted and I thought it would be interesting, is on your 10-year anniversary of AdMadDude, you posted about why you started the page, but someone asked the question, which maybe you will answer, maybe you won't, is like, what company made you want to start, what was the deal or campaign that you were working on that made you want to start AdMadDude, and sort of what is the origin story? And I'll add one part to that question, which they submitted, is like, what has kept you going for so long and keeps you motivated to continue working on AdMadDude?
A little technical difficulty, Haris. I think he's muted. Wait a minute. Can you unmute him? Wait a minute.
Yeah, thank you, Haris. Now, so I'll just quickly repeat the question to know if I've heard it correctly. You're saying that what was the starting point? What was that one particular brand or campaign that?
Yes, exactly.
And
That was
also,
part one, and part two is what has kept you going for so long and you continue to pour time into this.
see, it's not one brand or one campaign. And AdMadDude is not necessarily, I don't know, one person. It is a counter school of thought that exists. It is, and the reason why I did not give a very detailed introduction in the beginning is because it'll take a lot of time for people to understand what AdMadDude is. It is the collective frustration of people in the Pakistani advertising industry who are trying to do something effective, but are faced by status quo every single day of their lives. Starting from an intern in an agency who started today, who is full of ideas but is not allowed to step into the boardroom, to a creative director who's sitting in one of the top agencies but is not being taken seriously by the clients who are supposed to pay him to do his job and buy his ideas, but they are not because they are so full of themselves. AdMadDude is a state of mind that exists everywhere. We need to stop looking at it as one person. It is the collective frustration, as I said, and that collective frustration came out in 2013 through maybe one post, and maybe the trigger was one brand or one comms, but that's not important. The important thing is that we need to understand what happened in 2013. 2013 was the time when digital started booming. The face of advertising started to change. People started to see the possibilities that were there in front of them. Through the access to what was happening around the world, the young people were able to see the level of advertising that was there in the rest of the world. But yet, in our own homes, in our own agencies, everywhere there where we were able to see all those Buddha Baba sitting on top. And I don't want to sound ageist, I'm sorry. All those factors of a status quo who were not letting the ideas move. 2013 was the tipping point, and AdMadDude happened. Until then, from that point till today, it's a movement, right? Everybody is a part of it, with or without your name. Sometimes I see people write kick-ass pieces on LinkedIn, talking about what's really wrong and what's bothering them in today's times, especially specifically to marketing and advertising industry. They put out their posts with their names, but they're still AdMadDude because they are from that fraternity. They are the rebels.
Okay, we are at time. And so note for everyone, if you have any ideas or feedback, you're welcome to send it to ideas@founderpakistan.com. Thank you so much, AdMadDude, for joining us and doing this. It was super insightful. I learned a lot. I hope all of the people who joined learned a lot. We will be circulating this in video format to anyone who did not join or join late, so you can watch the full session. And again, thank you for attending and thank you for joining us, AdMad.